Welcome back. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today because we are unpacking something truly fascinating in this explainer. Today, we're diving into the very real but often totally invisible phenomenon of human energy and sensitivity. We're going to look at this through three completely distinct lenses: ancient history, modern internet spirituality, and clinical psychology. Our goal? To really figure out what it actually means to be highly attuned to the world around us. Now, think about this for a second. Have you ever noticed that being in a massive crowd just completely drains your energy? Or maybe you're the kind of person who constantly has strangers spilling their deepest, darkest secrets to you while you're just waiting in line at the grocery store. If you're nodding your head right now, I want to validate that. For highly sensitive individuals, the feeling of absorbing the emotions, the moods, and just the overall vibe of a room is incredibly real. And honestly, it can be totally overwhelming. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the human energy phenomenon, move on to the ancient concept of the subtle body, and then look at the signs of rare energy. After that, we'll explore the psychology of empaths, the real cost of the sensitivity, and finally, how you can actively protect your energy. All right, part one, the human energy phenomenon. That intense feeling of absorbing other people's moods, it isn't new. It's actually a universally reported human experience that different cultures have been trying to explain for millennia. Which brings us to our first lens, part two, the ancient subtle body. Let's look at how ancient esoteric traditions first tried to map out this invisible experience. Long before modern psychology was even a thing, ancient traditions explained this exact experience through something called the subtle body, or Sukshma Sharira in Sanskrit. You'll find this concept across Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism. They described it as a quasi-material part of us, so it's not physical flesh and bone, but it's not purely a spiritual ghost either. According to these teachings, your subtle body is made up of focal points. You've probably heard of them, chakras. And these are connected by invisible channels known as nadis. These ancient thinkers believed that the flow of subtle breath through these hidden channels literally dictated both our physical health and our emotional reality. And the evolution of this idea didn't just happen overnight. It's got a massive history. We're talking about a timeline that starts as early as the 2nd century BCE in Taoist texts and around the same time in the Indian Taittiriya Upanishad. From there, it was heavily developed during the Middle Ages through tantric movements, which is where the complex chakra system really took shape, before finally making its way to the West in the 19th century. But here's the wild part. Modern scientific studies on things like meditation are actually starting to map this ancient subtle body model directly onto the function of the human central nervous system. It's like they knew it all along. To help visualize this, the Taittiriya Upanishad viewed human energy not as a single solid layer, but as 5 interpenetrating sheaths, called koshas. Think of it kind of like a set of Russian nesting dolls. It starts with the dense, physical food body on the outside and moves all the way into the subtlest bliss body at the core. It was an absolutely brilliant, sophisticated way for the ancients to categorize human sensitivity and explain why we feel things we can't physically see. Moving right along to part 3, signs of rare energy. Let's bridge the gap from ancient texts to the modern day. If you jump onto modern internet spirituality communities, they're talking about this exact same phenomenon, but they call it having high vibrations or rare energy. And the anecdotal signs they look for are fascinating. For example, people with this energy report that strangers are constantly asking them for directions or heavily oversharing personal details. They have this razor-sharp intuitive ability to immediately sense a lie. They also say your mere presence might make people who aren't at peace feel super uncomfortable. Some even swear that empty stores suddenly get packed the second they walk in, or that karma seemingly catches up really fast to anyone who wrongs them. But my absolute favorite sign has to be what I call the Snow White effect. This is when highly intuitive animals, or even young children, instinctively flock to you. The idea here is that animals act as a natural barometer for human energy. They completely bypass all of our human social posturing and just naturally gravitate toward a pure, calming, and safe aura. All right, shifting gears to part 4, the psychology of empaths. Let's see what modern science has to say about all this. So we've got the ancient mystics and the internet spiritualists. But from a clinical, scientific perspective, people with this extreme attunement to their environment are called empaths. Dr. Judith Orloff, who is a massive pioneer in this field, perfectly sums it up. She says, Empaths absorb the world's joys and stresses like emotional sponges. Essentially, they are missing the typical psychological filters that most of us use to protect ourselves from excessive stimulation.
But why? What is the actual physical driver behind these intense feelings? Well, researchers point to two main things. First up, mirror neurons. These are highly specialized brain cells that control how we perceive and respond to other people's emotions. For an empath, these are extremely active, meaning they might literally feel someone else's sadness inside their own physical body. The second driver is hypervigilance. This is a state of constant environmental scanning and increased alertness. It's actually a survival mechanism, often developed after experiencing trauma, where the brain is just constantly checking the room to make sure everything is safe.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how science looks at the people empaths interact with. Research out of the University of Michigan studied relational energy and found that people generally fall into one of two camps. You've got energizers. These are authentic, upbeat, supportive team players. And then you have drainers, who are self-centered, demanding, complain constantly, and lack empathy. Because an empath is literally an emotional sponge, their daily well-being is dictated entirely by which of these two groups they're currently surrounded by. Which leads us directly into part 5, the cost of sensitivity. Because let's be totally real here, there is a dark side to this phenomenon. Being a highly sensitive sponge takes a huge toll. Imagine a day in your life where you walk into a room and instantly get frayed nerves just from the lights being too bright or the smells being too strong. Then, because you naturally want to help people, you let a friend give you a toxic emotion dump for 2 straight hours. You're left with severe compassion fatigue. You feel like you don't quite fit in because no one else seems to get exhausted this quickly. And eventually, all of this sensory and emotional overload leads to one thing: burnout and a massive urge to just completely isolate yourself from the world. We definitely don't want that. So, let's move to part 6, how to protect your energy. Whether you're looking at ancient esoteric texts or sitting in a modern therapist's office, the universal solution everyone agrees on is the exact same. You have to manage your environment and build boundaries. That is your first line of defense. You need to actively audit your life to remove energy takers. We're talking excessive screen time, bad sleep, toxic conversations, and overscheduling. And you have to deliberately replace them with energy givers, like spending time in nature, practicing mindfulness, resting, and surrounding yourself with a genuinely supportive community. To make this super concrete, here is a practical, science-backed toolkit you can start using right now to safeguard your well-being. Step 1. Set firm boundaries. You absolutely have to limit your interactions with those drainers we talked about earlier. Step 2. Schedule alone time. Give yourself permission to step away and take short, frequent breaks in nature just to decompress. Step 3. Practice mindfulness. Whether it's meditation or just spending some quality time with a pet, you need to actively reset that highly stimulated nervous system. So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Are you letting the world completely drain your reserves? Or are you actively setting the boundaries you need to let your unique energy flourish? I highly encourage you to take charge of your energetic blueprint and keep exploring the incredible depth of your own sensitivities. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.